Hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's Wednesday CE presentation called CBT for Insomnia, Secrets for Sound Sleep, presented by Kevin Cornelius, LJ Davis, and Anastasia Morrison, who I will introduce all of them to you in just a moment. And Kevin, you'll have to move us to the next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about, no, I'll keep that slide with the pictures on it. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about our presenters today. So Kevin Cornelius is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the intensive therapy manager at the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View. Kevin has been providing cognitive behavioral therapy to teens and adults for 9 years and was trained in Team CBT by the creator of it, Dr. David Burns at Stanford University. And he currently provides outpatient therapy to adults across the lifespan who struggle with depression, anxiety, insomnia, and relationship problems. He's a certified level 4 advanced therapist and trainer in Team CBT, and he's also been certified as a CBT for insomnia therapist by Dr. Greg Jacobs of Harvard Medical School. Kevin provides both in-person and online case consultation and training in Team CBT, and he'll be leading the presentation for all of us today. And then we also have LJ Davis. LJ is a licensed counselor across California, North Carolina, and Georgia. Boasting over 16 years of experience, LJ specializes in sleep and insomnia, social anxiety, and depression. And as a level 4 Team CBT trainer, LJ not only treats clients, but also trains therapists globally, showcasing his dedication to advancing the field of CBT. LJ loves to travel and is currently running about 10 miles a week, building toward a possible marathon this fall. And our next featured presenter is Anastasia Morrison. And Anastasia is an associate marriage and family therapist at the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View, California. She's a Team CBT Level 3 advanced clinician and also certified in CBTI for insomnia, specializing in addressing the root causes of poor sleep and guiding individuals toward becoming normal sleepers. Anastasia leverages her expertise to provide effective treatment for insomnia. She's also passionate about working with couples using research-based methods like EFT. Anastasia has experience working with anxiety and OCD. Additionally, she enjoys working with tech industry professionals, and she's a parent of 2 and closing in soon on 25 years of marriage, which feeds her interest in how to maintain loving, lasting relationships, in addition to one with her cat. So I'm very pleased to have all 3 of these presenters presenting to you today. And I actually am very excited about this topic of CBT for insomnia, because I think that so often, even if people present to us for different kinds of problems, very frequently people are asking for help with sleep. And so I think that you're all in for a treat and you'll learn a lot today. Okay, next slide. Let me just tell you briefly about the Feeling Good Institute, and then we're going to quickly move into the content of the presentation today. So our mission at the Feeling Good Institute is to alleviate suffering by elevating the practice of therapy. So we were started by a group of clinicians, originally mentored by Dr. David Burns at Stanford University. We train and certify therapists in the processes of CBT that are known to be most effective, including the use of measurement, empathy skills, increasing motivation, and reducing resistance, as well as the kind of classic cognitive and behavioral therapy skills that are evidence-based. All the therapists at Feeling Good Institute are highly skilled and vetted, and we're all engaged in a weekly system of continuous improvement. You probably heard, if you were at last month's webinar, a lot about the deliberate practice model, and all of us are engaged in really kind of upping our game week over week using deliberate practice. We also have flexible services to meet clients' needs. So we have video-based treatment across the US and Canada, and then treatment centers in New York, Silicon Valley, Canada, and Israel. So we see people in person as well as online, and we do weekly sort of traditional 50-minute sessions with many of our patients, but we also have an intensive therapy program where people come in from out of town, or we do it on video some of the time as well, where people can get kind of a concentrated amount of therapy, many hours a day, many days a week, in order to really accelerate progress. And we also have some lower fee options as well. Next slide. So the last thing I'll say, and then I'm turning it over to Kevin, is how can you get your CE credit today? Well, you have to be here for the full hour. And at 5 of 1 Pacific time, we'll drop the link to the CE survey in the chat box. You have to complete the CE survey while you're here in the presentation today at 1 o'clock in order to get your CE credit. So please be present, complete the CE survey, and then within a week, so not today, not tomorrow, but within a week after we go through attendance and all of that, you'll receive your certificate of completion via email as long as you completed the survey today. Okay, and now I think I'll be turning it over to you, Kevin.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jill. And thank you to everybody for joining us. It's really exciting to have you all here. This is a topic that LJ, Anastasia, and I are also very passionate about, and we're really happy to be sharing this information with you. You can see the plan for today here, and we have a lot that we want to share with you, so I'm going to get started right away here. So today, you can see here what our learning objectives are. Please note that today is a brief introduction to CBT for insomnia. If you were going to use CBTI effectively with your clients, you're going to want to get some more training after today. And at the end of the presentation, we're providing you with some resources. For example, I'll just mention that I went through an excellent training program by Dr. Greg D. Jacobs of Harvard Medical School that taught me a structured, comprehensive program for providing CBTI. And of course, Dr. Jacobs' program is not the only way to go, but I found it very useful, and some of what I'll be presenting today is based on Dr. Jacobs' work. And I also just want to mention that, one of the goals here today is that hopefully you'll get inspired to learn more about CBTI so that you can offer these services to your clients. It's a wonderful set of skills to have to really help people improve their lives by improving their sleep. And we're going to start today with some background information, just discussing what is insomnia. So when we talk about insomnia, we mean a sleep-wake disorder with one or more of 3 primary symptoms. The first would be challenges falling asleep or sleep onset insomnia, an inability to maintain sleep, which we would call sleep maintenance insomnia, and then early morning wakefulness, so waking at least 30 minutes before the desired time and before sleep reaches 6.5 hours. And that's often accompanied by an inability to go back to sleep at all. Other symptoms of chronic insomnia are that sleep difficulty is present at least 3 nights per week and for a period of at least 3 months or longer. The patient struggles with sleep even with ample opportunity, and there's no other sleep-wake disorder or substance problem or coexisting mental health condition that would explain the insomnia experience. And I'd like to talk about how insomnia often develops. So insomnia is initially a common response to stressful life events. A subset of people develop chronic insomnia, which persists in the absence of those initial stressors. Thoughts and behaviors are what maintain and strengthen insomnia, creating a chronic learned insomnia. To conquer insomnia, these negative thoughts and behaviors must be replaced with CBTI techniques. And recent studies demonstrate that CBTI is highly effective, moves the majority of those with insomnia into the range of normal sleepers, works better than sleeping pills, and is now considered the treatment of choice for insomnia. So we do want to touch briefly on problems with sleep medications. A lot of people will come into treatment having tried sleep medications and may be even dependent upon them when they enter CBTI. And that's really unfortunate because medications are just not the answer for solving a chronic insomnia problem. They can be addictive. There are often negative side effects, including a daytime hangover effect of medications. And a big problem is that when patients stop taking the sleep medications, often the insomnia just returns because the root causes of insomnia, thoughts and behaviors, are not addressed by medications. So So in summary, the combination of worry about sleep and maladaptive sleep habits can transform a brief period of insomnia into a case of learned chronic insomnia. Treatment of chronic insomnia must focus not on the initial upsetting events, but rather on changing the thoughts and behaviors that play the primary role in perpetuating insomnia. And since these thoughts and behaviors are learned, they can also be unlearned using a multifactorial CBTI intervention that is sleep-focused, short-term, and structured. And recent studies demonstrate that CBTI is highly effective, moves the majority of those with insomnia into that normal range, and doesn't have those side effects of sleeping pills. So that's why it is considered ideal. Okay, we're going to talk about what are the core techniques of CBTI. So there are 6 core techniques. You can see them listed here, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about each one. Cognitive restructuring simply means replacing negative sleep thoughts with positive sleep thoughts. And it's very powerful. People really can change their sleep quality by changing the way that they think about their sleep. Sleep scheduling, that includes reducing time in bed in order to increase sleep efficiency. And that helps the brain associate the bed with sleep instead of associating the bed with restlessness and frustration. Sleep medication tapering often needs to be included as a part of the treatment. And, personally, I'm not a doctor, so I would only do this in cooperation with the patient's doctor. I would share with them the schedule that I was planning on learning. We follow a special schedule for tapering off the sleep medications. And I'll just mention that the schedule I use is from that program I mentioned by Dr. Jacobs, and it's been shown to help 90% of patients eliminate the need for sleep medications. Stimulus control, that is simply using habits to make the bed a cue for drowsiness and sleep instead of a cue for wakefulness and stress. And that includes habits like not working in bed, not using a smartphone in bed, not getting into bed unless drowsy, and more. We also want to include relaxation techniques. We can use guided relaxation recordings that can teach the patient to relax and increase their drowsiness. And that's, of course, better than the alternative, which is lying in bed awake, restless, and frustrated, with increased stress exacerbating the insomnia. Sleep hygiene involves important habits for improving the amount and quality of sleep. And these habits include behaviors like increasing exercise. The patient can take a hot bath 2 hours before bedtime. They can use light exposure in the morning if they have sleep onset insomnia, or use exposure to bright light in the evening if they are awakening too early in the morning. Reducing or eliminating the use of caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol should be considered for proper sleep hygiene. Now, in our presentation today, we're going to be focusing on what are 2 of the primary things that really need to be addressed first. We're going to be looking at cognitive restructuring and sleep scheduling. So let's talk about cognitive restructuring. These techniques are essential in managing insomnia. They enable patients to recognize, challenge, and replace negative sleep thoughts with more accurate adaptive cognitions called positive sleep thoughts. So these positive sleep thoughts improve sleep because they short-circuit the cycle of emotional arousal, psychophysiological activation, and insomnia. And it's important for patients to recognize that cognitive restructuring is not the same as denying their insomnia, but rather it means to think about insomnia in a less negative and distorted way. And we're going to give you an example of how we can teach something to patients that would help them create positive sleep thoughts that talk back to a very important negative sleep thought. So we're going to take a poll right now. We want to ask everyone to just think about, what do you think is the ideal number of hours that people need in order to be healthy? And we'll just take a few moments for people to answer these, and then we will let you know what the results are.
I can see how many people are answering, so I'll just give us another, 15 seconds or something like that to try to get us up to 100% participation here. So if you haven't answered the poll yet, go ahead and cast your vote. Okay. I'll go ahead and end the poll, and then I'll share the results so that you all can see them. Kevin, are you able to see the results?
I can. Yeah. So this is a little bit of a complicated answer, actually. The thing that's most important to address is that most patients, when they come in for treatment, they're going to think that 8 hours is what they have to have. And they're not getting their 8 hours, so therefore they're unhealthy and they're not going to be able to function during the day. The truth is, and I'm going to look at my information and give it to you more properly here. And by the way, we can see that 41% of you saw that 7 hours was the ideal range, which is ding, 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 the answer we're looking for. It's not that 8 hours or 6 hours or 9 would be wrong. It's just that the ideal number would be 7, and I'm gonna explain that to you here in just a moment. Is it okay if I close? That won't change anything. Okay. So studies show that the lowest mortality rate for all causes is associated with 7 hours of sleep, and higher mortality occurs at 8 or more and 6 or less. And that suggests that the ideal healthy amount of sleep may actually be 7 hours. And average sleep is between 6 and 8 hours. Core sleep, which is the minimum amount required for good health, is 5.5 hours. So that's not to say that everyone is going to feel super great with 5.5 hours sleep. I wouldn't feel great with that. Most people need additional optional sleep in order to feel their best, but you can see how a patient could know that, oh, as long as I got 5.5, I'm at least getting my core sleep. I'm getting what my body needs. Maybe I won't feel my absolute best, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to function today. So a couple other things to keep in mind is that studies also show that the effects of a poor night of sleep are not as great as we think. The evidence of the effects of a lack of sleep on people show that the only consequence of a lack of sleep is potentially having low mood. And this is on insomnia subjects. If it was a different sleep-wake disorder, that might be different. But for insomnia patients, really low mood is the negative consequence potentially. A low mood is not necessarily a given. In fact, all of us here today can probably think of many times when we were up late for positive reasons, like a party or a vacation or a special event, and we did not have low mood the next day because we associated less sleep with a positive experience. So let's consider how we can use this information to help a patient who's in treatment. Oops, I'm not able to. Now I can move my slide. Okay. So one of the negative sleep thoughts that the patient might record is they're telling themselves, I need 8 hours of sleep every night to stay healthy. And we can teach them the positive thought to talk back to that, which is my performance will not suffer significantly if I get my core sleep, something like that. And then they also might be telling themselves, I'm going to have a terrible day today because of my sleep. I won't be able to work well. And they can replace that with the positive thought. In most cases, the worst thing that may happen if I don't sleep well is that my mood will be impaired during the day. Now, the negative sleep thoughts and the positive sleep thoughts that counter them are recorded on a sleep diary that the patient fills out every morning. And the sleep diary is also a place for the patient to record details like what time they got into bed, turned the lights out, how long before they fell asleep, the time they woke up, the time they got out of bed, that total time in bed and versus the total sleep time and other factors. So the sleep diary is an essential piece of the patient taking advantage of sleep scheduling. And that's a technique that LJ is now going to talk about. So take it away, LJ.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And before I get started, I just want to say I've noticed I've gotten several chats that have come to me, and I'm not able really to look at them during the presentation. So if you're sending chats to me, I'm probably not going to have time to answer them, unfortunately. So maybe just copy and paste those over to Jill instead.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll just say I put something in the chat box saying if you have any questions, send them my way. So all questions should come to me and not to any of the other presenters. I'm putting together a whole list of all the questions that I'll be asking during the Q&A. Thanks, LJ.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jill. And thank you, Kevin, for the introduction there. And I think I think each part is kind of a core part. And so I'm going to say sleep scheduling is to me the core of CBTI, though the cognitive restructuring is also a core. And the sleep scheduling is so important because somebody who's a healthy sleeper is spending most of their time in bed, typically asleep. The studies are like 90 to 95% of time in bed is asleep. And that's what we call sleep efficiency, just the time somebody is asleep divided by the amount of time that they're in bed. Whereas somebody with insomnia often will be spending a great deal more time in bed than they are asleep, and that will lower their sleep efficiency down to somewhere in the vicinity of 65%, or sometimes, a fair amount of variation around that average number. And so what we need to do with somebody who's having problems with insomnia before we try to increase the quantity of their sleep is to increase that sleep efficiency, which will have a few key effects, one of which is it will increase the quality of their sleep. Moving from having a lot of light sleep where they're kind of waking up and going back to sleep. And I'm sure many of us have spent a night or a morning in bed where we're kind of there dozing in and out. And sometimes it can feel lovely. But if that's the way sleep is always going for you, you're not going to be getting the deep sleep that you need. And so the sleep scheduling is going to concentrate the time that they're in bed to improve that quality of sleep. And the way that we will do that, if we want to go on to the next slide and talk about sleep scheduling, Kevin mentioned a sleep diary, and that's something I give to any patient I'm working with on insomnia. Before I start to do any sleep scheduling, I would give them the sleep diary so that they will keep track for a week of the amount of time that they're in bed. So it would tell me what time they go to bed, also what time they actually try to go to sleep, because a lot of times people will go to bed, but then they will read or scroll on their phone, or back in the day, we used to watch TV, but it's probably phones more now. Excuse me. And we want to know that time difference too, where they're spending that time in bed, not even trying to go to sleep yet, as well as in the morning. A lot of times people with insomnia will wake up and they'll stay in bed longer trying to catch a little more sleep. Just let me catch up a little bit more. Also, as their sleep problems get worse, they will start going to bed earlier and earlier. I say this as somebody who's struggled with insomnia myself in the past, and I know that I certainly did that. My bedtime usually is like 10 to 11, but when I was struggling with sleep, I'd get so tired so early. I would start with like 9:30 and then 9 o'clock, but then I was waking up all through the night as a result. So once we get that sleep diary that tells us how much time that they're actually sleeping, we'll also work with them. If you want to click, Kevin, work with them to find out what is the earliest time that they need to wake up each day. So if somebody has a certain day that they have to get up earlier to get the kids off to school, or whatever, earlier day for church or synagogue or whatever might make their earliest time of day, then we would want to know that. And that's going to be their wake up time throughout the week. This is going to be our anchor point for the whole of sleep scheduling, is having a very consistent time to wake up. And then once we know what that earliest time is, and we've got the sleep diary, we can hit the next step, please, Kevin. Calculate their sleep window. So once again, we know how much time they're actually sleeping, and we know what time they're going to get up. So let's imagine that they're actually sleeping 6 hours per night. We're going to add 30 minutes onto that to get their sleep window. So that would be a 6.5 hour sleep window. If they have to give up at 7 each morning, then we will count backwards from that 6.5 hours to set that time to go to bed. And so that would be, 12:30, which a lot of people will be shocked when their person who's helping them with insomnia has them going to bed later than they've been going to bed. And that's what I found to be pretty common, is usually it's like, hey, you're going to have to stay up a little while. And then we have to do some planning on what you can do to keep yourself awake, but also not be keeping yourself overstimulated so that you're actually able to go to sleep at that time. The other key thing about that sleep time, thank you, Kevin, is that it is the earliest time you can get into bed. So if it gets to 12:30 and our imagined person is not actually tired, then we would say, well, don't get into bed. You need to do something relaxing, have a cup of warm milk if you're into that, or do a little crochet or crossword puzzle or whatever it is that you enjoy, that you might get drowsy while you're doing it. And then once you get drowsy, you can go on to bed, because we want them really to be building that association between in bed, I'm tired, and I go to sleep. We want to make that falling asleep as easy as possible. And so Kevin and I are going to do a little role play now just to show how we might work through this sequence of things with a client. Are you ready, Kevin?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, awesome. Well, Kevin, it has been great talking with you last week about insomnia, and now you have come back to me with this really good sleep diary. I really appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. I know it's kind of an annoying thing to have to do every morning, and in some ways it's like putting in your face that you're struggling with sleep each day. And so just admire a lot that you've put the work into doing that. And if we look at it, it looks like, you know, some days you're sleeping more and some days you're sleeping less. And I'm sure there's lots of things with your schedule that show up there, but on average, it looks like you're actually getting about 5.5 hours of sleep per night. Does that sound about right? Does that look right to you, Kevin?
That seems accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So we know you're sleeping for about 5.5 hours per night. And so we're going to add 30 minutes onto that. And we're going to let you spend 6 hours per night in bed maximum for this coming week. I know, right? It's been so much more than that. What are your thoughts there, Kevin?
Yeah. I guess it just seems weird to spend less time in bed in order to get more sleep, but you know, I'm putting my trust in you, but this is the way to go. But yeah, I've been spending a lot more time in bed than that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it really is counterintuitive. Like we have this thought, if I'm not sleeping well, let me spend more time in bed. And if that worked, we probably wouldn't be here today. So you're right that it is odd, but I've also just found this approach so much more effective. So thank you for putting trust in me and being willing to try this out. The next part is, what is the day that you have to get up earliest in the morning? Is there a certain day when you have to get up earlier for one reason or another?
Yeah, I would say on Tuesdays I have to get up at 5.
Okay. So this may sound a little hard too, Kevin. If 5 o'clock is your wake up time on Tuesdays, could we agree that you would set 5 o'clock as your wake up time, not just on Tuesday, but all 7 days of the week?
Okay. No sleeping in on the weekend, huh?
That's that's exactly right. Yeah, I know
All right.
that's a big one for people. But yeah, and to be clear, this is just for the course of the time that we're working together and working on this insomnia. I like
Okay.
to think of this as sleep quality training. And so we're going to put this structure around your sleep for right now to improve the quality of your sleep. And once you're sleeping well through the night, then we can also start to expand the amount of time that you need to sleep until we can tell from the sleep diaries that you're getting the amount of sleep you need. You're not feeling as tired through the day and you're able to fall asleep easier and all of those things. And once we've accomplished that, then we can start to withdraw some of this structure too, so that you can go back to sleeping like somebody who doesn't have a sleep problem. You can go back to, you know, maybe having the occasional nap or being more flexible with your schedule once we've got things set up. How does that sound? Would you be willing to give this a try for, 4 to 6 weeks at least?
Totally. Yeah, that sounds doable.
Okay, awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing how this is all worked out next week. And we'll say end scene. Thank you, Kevin, for that role play.
Thank you.
Yes. I think the next slide will be back to you. Oh no, it's me still, sorry. So then here's just another, or a case example. This is somebody I worked with a few months back, and I'm going to call them Charlie, which is not their real name. And I'll say they're in one of the 3 states that Jill mentioned I'm licensed in, so we can give them even multi-geographic anonymity. But they were referred to me by their doctor. And basically the way they told the story to their doctor was they just one night, all of a sudden, they lost the ability to sleep. And that really troubled them. And so the next night, like they went through the process a lot faster than I think most people do, because it was like one night they didn't sleep well. And the next night they're like, oh my goodness, I really need to go to bed early so that I will catch up on the sleep that I missed last night. And then they didn't sleep well that night either. And then that just sort of compounded over time where they were not sleeping as well at night. They were going to bed quite early by the time that I met with them, I think around 8 o'clock in the evening, and then sort of wrestling through the night until 5 or 6 in the morning. I don't remember entirely which one it was. So they were in bed for a really long time, but they were still not sleeping very well. And the doctor had given them some sleeping medication. And depending on the medicine, what happened for them is fairly typical. it worked for a little while because it gave them a boost in their confidence in their ability to sleep. But then when they had a sleepless night or two, again, they kind of lost that confidence. And for that particular medication, it sort of stopped working for them. And they went back to the doctor, and eventually the doctor sent them to me. And so we really had to have some difficult conversations with them about how insomnia works. And they were very much like Kevin just was in that role play, where they understood the rationale after I explained it. And still each time, like when I said, okay, you're going to have to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning all week. And they're like, oh, but I love to sleep so much. Why on earth would I give that up? And similarly with going to bed a little bit later at night, they were very concerned about how they were going to stay up for that time. And we worked to set up like sort of a cozy corner in their living room, which would have their puzzle books that they liked. They liked doing word searches, and a few other things that were kind of creature comforts, so they could stay there and be comfortable in the evening. And then when they got drowsy and they reached their right time, then they could go off to bed. And then it was really a pretty dramatic change how quickly things started to turn around for them once we had that all set up. I think honestly, the first week it was a little bit slow to set in as they were still getting used to this new schedule. And then by the second week, they were getting their like 90% time in bed asleep. And so then we were able to slowly increase the amount of time that they were in bed. And I think with them, we were doing about 15 to 20 minutes each week. We would add on while we were working on that, also working on some of the stimulus control things that Kevin talked about, as well as the cognitive restructuring, and doing a little bit of even experimental methods of like, let's look and see how tired you really feel all through the next day. And one of their big concerns had been that they often felt drowsy driving to and from work. And within 4 weeks to a month and a half, they came in one day and they're like, I'm not actually feeling drowsy anymore on the way to work. And that was like a huge suddenly realizing this was really working for them. And then we spaced out our appointments a little bit more after that, but I probably saw them a total of 6 times, if I'm remembering right. And by the end of it, they were sleeping well. And it was clear to both of us that we were ready to complete treatment. And I've not seen them clinically since then, but I saw them maybe a month ago, just in town, and they sort of gave me a thumbs up as I walked by. And so I take that to mean that it's continued to work for them. And as I talked about with Kevin, we did at the end then start to pull away some of the structure too, so that they could go back to what I think of as sleep in the wild, as opposed to this highly structured sleep that we use to get things rolling again.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, LJ. That was fantastic. And I want to talk about our next piece that we want to introduce today. Here at Feeling Good Institute, we use the Team CBT model, and that was developed by Dr. David Burns, as Jill mentioned earlier. And it includes really powerful methods for lowering resistance to treatment. Now, making changes in sleep thoughts and behaviors and using the sleep scheduling that LJ was demonstrating, that can be really challenging. And many patients may understandably have resistance to the changes that they're being asked to make when we use CBTI techniques. For example, let's see here. Am I on the right? But yeah, so we're going to be asking them to keep a sleep diary, right? And to write every day. They're going to be recording, all those details that we talked about. That's a lot of work. And that's a new thing for them that they're going to have to incorporate into their morning. And so that it seems likely that they would have some resistance to doing that. Going to bed and getting out of bed at regular times, that takes a lot of discipline. It's not easy sometimes. So there's going to be resistance there. And then, of course, reducing that time in bed in order to increase sleep efficiency and the quality of sleep. That's really hard to do, especially for patients who see that as counterintuitive. So Anastasia, who is with us, is now going to tell us about some really excellent tools from Team CBT for addressing resistance, and that could be helpful for a patient who's resistant to using sleep scheduling techniques. So go ahead, Anastasia. Are you still with us, Anastasia?
Apologize, I was muted. Thanks, Kevin. As Kevin mentioned, insomnia patient may have some resistance to doing some of the work recommended to get over their insomnia. So I'm going to introduce and walk you through 3 team CBT tools, which are paradoxical in nature and serve to boost motivation and reduce potential resistance. I'm going to focus specifically on the recommendation to do sleep scheduling with this example. And so the first one is something called the triple paradox. And it's a chart that we fill in with the client and where they generate all the good reasons to maintain their current sleep habits. And basically, why not to do the sleep scheduling? We're going to bring all those thoughts to conscious awareness explicitly. We do this because prior sleep habits can be immensely rewarding, and we need some strong tools to look at this and see if we can reduce resistance and increase motivation. So specifically, we're going to be looking at the advantages of maintaining their current sleep habits and spending as much time in bed as they want, whenever they want. Okay, that's the first thing we do with the triple paradox. And then secondly, we would look at the disadvantages of using the sleep scheduling or implementing this new habit. Lastly, we'll look at the core values of maintaining their current sleep habits. So after we walk through the triple paradox, I'll also briefly demonstrate 2 other team CBT methods that work with resistance. And I will pause and point those out when I do a role play with LJ to demo this, okay? But the next method is called a pivot question. This is what we ask after we've completed the triple paradox table and have come up with a lot, after the clients come up with a lot of good reasons to not do the work, in this case, the new sleep scheduling. Okay, we ask them this question, the pivot question. We ask a question that serves to put them in the driver's seat and paradoxically inquire as to why they would want to do the sleep scheduling after all. Okay, and we let them answer that. All right. And then the third and last method is called externalization of resistance. And it continues with these similar goals in mind, making sure if the client really wants to do the work, putting them in the position to argue for change, which is much more powerful than just telling the client what to do. So LJ and I will now do a demo and demonstrate a role play with the client around the sleep scheduling and implementing these 3 team CBT assessment resistant tools. So you can skip to the next slide now, Kevin. So LJ, we've talked about this concept of sleep scheduling. And as you know, this means adjusting your time to wake up around the same time daily and going to bed around a certain time, also during this therapy. And it's a powerful intervention. Now, as you can imagine, people may have some hesitancy in implementing this. And you probably have some really good reasons that come up as to why to maintain your present sleep habits. I'd like to use some methods with you that work with this to look at those explicitly and explore them up front, if that's okay.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So this chart, this triple paradox chart that we have pulled up, has 3 columns in it, and we're going to fill them out together. And the first column lists the advantages of maintaining your current sleep habit. The second column will look at the disadvantages of implementing the sleep scheduling. And the last column lists the core values of maintaining your current sleep habits while identifying values that are important and positive to you. So why don't we start with the first column, LJ? Can you think of some advantages of your current sleep habits? And we'll try and come up with like three if you can.
Well, the first thing is you said I'm going to have to like get up and then get out of bed when I wake up in the morning. And honestly, the best hour of my day most days is that first hour when I wake up and I'm still kind of drowsy. And I just sort of stay there in the bed and it's cozy and warm. So like that first hour of the morning, just relaxing in bed is heaven. And you're telling me I would have to give that up.
Yeah. So an advantage of your current sleep habit is that extra hour in the morning. It feels really heavenly. Right? You have to get up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're going to write that one down under the first column there, and go ahead. Can you think of any others?
Well, right now I have some real flexibility about when I wake up. Like if it's, the weekend and I want to sleep in, I can do that. If it's, a work day and I need to get up a little early and get some things done before I go to the office, I can do that. Like I just can wake up whenever I want to or whenever I need to. And that's awesome.
So another advantage of your current habit is flexibility to wake up when you want. All right. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Let's write that one down as well. And can you think of one more, maybe?
Well, you're telling me I can't get in bed until a certain time either. And there's a lot of times when I'm really tired already earlier in the evening. And if I go to bed early, I think I'm going to get a better chance at having a good night's sleep. And so thinking like going to bed early gives me the best chance for getting additional rest.
So so not being able to go to bed earlier is another advantage of your current schedule. Like basically, you're not going to have that option of going to bed earlier. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, these are really specific and absolutely they're advantages, no question about it. Let's move on to the second column, if you don't mind. Now I want you to think about what are some disadvantages of implementing the sleep scheduling.
This is kind of similar to one of the ones I just said, but it's going to be a drag getting up at the same time every day. Like I gotta like, no matter what, get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and some mornings that's just gonna suck.
Yeah, so getting up, it'll be a real drag getting up at the same time every morning.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So let's write that one down. And can you think of any more?
This is just gonna take effort. Like the way I've been doing things is kind of effortless. I do what I want when I want. I don't have to think about it. No effort to it whatsoever. But this, I'm going to have to like pay attention and set an alarm clock and all these sorts of things to make sure that it happens the way we're talking about.
Yeah, it's going to take some work, huh? Take some effort, require
Mhm.
some change on your part.
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. That's we'll write that one down as well. And can you think of one more disadvantage of implementing this sleep scheduling?
Well, one of the things that I really love in life is staying out late and going to sing karaoke. And I've always been able to do that and not worry about how it's going to affect me too much the next day because I would just sleep in. And I think I'm probably going to have to cut back on karaoke and not stay up as late anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So cutting back, won't be able to do karaoke maybe as often or stay up as late. All right. Okay. Absolutely. Another disadvantage of implementing it. Great. You're doing a great job, LJ. Let's move on to the third column and look at these core values that really show something important about you that are positive.
Hmm. Well, the first one that comes to mind is like we've been talking about flexibility and whatnot. And I guess I kind of see myself as a free spirit, and you've got this easygoing nature, and just kind of going with the flow has been my thing.
Yeah. So one of your values is you're kind of this easygoing, free-spirited guy, and this kind of goes against it somewhat. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. Any more?
I guess too, I've always been taught and always believed in listening to my body. And so when my body says I'm sleepy, and like that means I ought to be in bed, I think. And so I really value
Mm,
listening, like trusting what my body tells me.
yeah. So another core value is really listening to your body. That's super important to you, trusting your body, respecting what it says. Yeah.
Hmm.
This kind of goes against it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can you think of a third one?
I mean, I think just that I value pleasure. Like it feels really good. Like I said, that first hour in the morning when I'm just, you know, cozy in the blankets and the quilts and everything is it's just fantastic.
Mm,
It's a good thing to value my own pleasure.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you value kind of soothing and nurturing and taking care of your body in those
Hmm.
moments. Yeah. Okay. All right. So LJ, those are all great reasons you came up with. Really good job coming up with really specific and authentic responses. They make a lot of sense. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. So and here we have the chart filled in so y'all can see. And now I'm going to ask the pivot question. So LJ, Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So with all these benefits, that you put down, like being able to do karaoke as often as you want and staying up as late as often as you want, not having that extra hour in the morning that you find so heavenly, why bother doing the sleep scheduling?
Well, I mean, all these things are true, Anastasia, but it's not really working out for me overall. Like, all these things, that extra hour in the morning is great, and um, karaoke is great and all that. But the truth is, I'm spending most of my time really incredibly tired, or like, drinking 2 or 3 energy drinks to get through the day and to be able to do that karaoke late at night. And then I get jittery and have a hard time doing things, or it's just overall, there's a lot more misery than there is pleasure in the way things are going right now.
You bring up some good points, LJ. So just to let you all know, I'm going to go into externalization of resistance right now. So LJ, you brought up some good points, but if what you're saying is so true, I know, but what a drag. You're going to have to get up early at the same time daily.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a drag, but so is like feeling like I wish I could go back to bed at 10 o'clock every day at work, and then having that go on for the rest of the day. Like, the way I'm living right now is a drag more than getting up at the same time every day. And you said I wouldn't have to do that forever. It would be, until things got better, hopefully. So it is a drag, but it's totally worth it to try to get something better than what I've got going on right now.
Yeah, that may be true. But that extra hour you're going to lose in the morning, man, that's going to be rough.
You know how to hit me where it hurts, Anastasia. That's for sure. And I do love that hour, but again, it's like not an even trade. We're talking about 1 hour of the day that's really great, and then a day that's mostly crappy. If I can give up that hour and have a good shot at getting better sleep each night, I think that would be a lot more pleasure in my life, actually, than that 1 hour that feels so good in the morning.
Okay, well, thanks, LJ. That marks the end of our role play demonstration of addressing resistance using these team CBT tools. Okay, we used the triple paradox, we asked the pivot question, and we did externalization of resistance. Now, this paradoxically put LJ in a position of arguing for change or talking back. And this is much more powerfully motivating for change. And as David Burns puts it, helps to melt away resistance.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, LJ and Anastasia. And we're going to be wrapping up our presentation part here. And we want to mention that there are some great resources that we've listed here that you might use to get some more education about CBTI. So there's a great book, Say Goodnight to Insomnia by Dr. Greg D. Jacobs. That's written for a patient to read and use techniques to help themselves. But it's also a really great way for clinicians to learn how the methods work and what the different 6 core techniques are meant to do. LJ is recommending the book Goodnight Mind by Colleen Carney and Rachel Manber. And can you tell us a little bit about what it is you like about that book, LJ?
It's another one that is designed for the patient. I've actually not read Dr. Jacobs' book, but the book that I prescribe to all of my insomnia patients is Goodnight Mind. And it's short and sweet and straightforward, and really helps to guide people through the same things we've been talking about today.
Great. And we included Feeling Great by Dr. David D. Burns here because, again, that's a book that's written for the general public to use, but it does such a good job of teaching about the assessment of resistance tools and how we can help patients melt away that resistance. So the methods that we use can be really powerful and helpful. So I thought we should include that. If you haven't read that book, that's a great resource. And then I put on here cbtforinsomnia.com is where you can get information about doing a training in CBTI with an excellent program. And I think we are ready to move forward for Jill to lead us in some Q&A.
Can I jump in and add one resource before we do that? Sorry, Jill, but somebody sent me a message about it, and it's one I appreciate them sending to me because I've used it in the past and it is helpful. And there's an app called Insomnia Coach that was created by the VA to help people do CBTI. So I just wanted to put that one out there. It's a good app and it's free for anybody.
Wonderful. And I just want to remind people that you need to stick around until the end of the presentation so you can get the CE survey. So I need to share with the presenters that this is clearly an excellent webinar and a topic that people are so interested in. I have never before received the number of questions. I'm totally overwhelmed with the questions that have come in. I think we got about 60 questions. So even if we took one a minute, it would take us 60 minutes to answer all of your questions. So what I tried to do was frantically tabulate how many people were asking. I mean, not exactly, but we're asking kind of the high frequency questions. So if you sent me a question about a particular case, about your sleep habits, we're probably not going to get to it, but instead I'm going to really just try and ask you guys the questions that are exactly on point and high frequency questions. So, and let's try and do it quickly because we have a few more slides I want to share with you all about additional training. So the first most common question was, you guys talked about a sleep diary. Where do we find the sleep diary? And or what exactly are you having your patients track? So lots of questions about the sleep diary, which one you use.
I have one that I got from the training I did, which was with Colleen Carney that we mentioned the book from a second ago, but it has a title, something like Consensus Sleep Diary, something along those lines. You may be able to find it with a Google search. I'm not sure, but basically it tracks when do people go to bed, how long do they think it took them to fall asleep. So how much time were they in bed before they fell asleep? How many times did they wake up during the night? About how long did those awakenings last total? Then what time did they wake up in the morning and what time did they get out of bed? And that way we're able to get both the times that they're in bed awake and the times that they're in bed asleep and figure out exactly how much time they're actually asleep in bed to figure out so that we can set that sleep window.
So I'm just putting in the chat box, the one you said is the Consensus Sleep Diary. And then the app, people are asking again, what was the app name that you said you like?
It is called Insomnia Coach.
Insomnia Coach. Okay.
Yes, and it's from VA Mobile.
Great. So people were asking for that. Is there another sleep diary real quick, Kevin? Or
I can add to a little bit. So usually they're set up weekly. You fill it in weekly, and it's a chart. And the Jacobs book, which is the same protocol that that Kevin did, I also got certified in out of Harvard. That book, Say Goodnight to Insomnia, it has it in there as well.
Right. And a lot of people ask questions about wearables. So we're talking about rings or watches that track sleep. How does that help or hinder this protocol?
So
Kevin. Oh,
yeah,
I saw Kevin smile.
Yeah, I'll be happy to jump in. So, you know, the only thing I know about that and the training program that I got from Dr. Jacobs might be a little bit not up to date with what those tools are doing now, but at the time that within the last, couple of years when he created the videos and the training, was saying that they're just not accurate enough to be helpful. And so people really like their Fitbits and their rings and whatever, and they want to use that to calculate the amount of time that they're in bed and they're sleeping and such, but it's actually important for them to just try to estimate it on their own. We don't want them to get into a habit of clock watching because that can also increase the stress and tension around sleep. But and this may be I may be quoting just somebody's bias against those tools. I don't know. Did anybody else, LJ or Anastasia, see any of those that were particularly helpful that we shouldn't rule out?
The training I was given was similar to, there were two reasons behind it. One is that at that time, which again was also a year or two ago, there were too many of them that were too inaccurate for us to really be able to say to rely on them. Another one is that insomnia is as much about our perceptions of our sleep as it is about our actual sleep. And so something that helps us to understand our clients' perceptions is sometimes more valuable than actually knowing how much time they spend asleep.
Yeah. And I wanted to add one thing, which was that it was very interesting. And then I have one more question I'll ask you guys, but to the audience, notice that after Kevin shared the poll with you, I actually got a slew of people kind of arguing about what is ideal sleep time, which was so interesting because actually Kevin's point in sharing that poll with you was to say healthy, right? What we sort of like know we need based on research, and people were arguing, but I need more sleep, or but my patients need more sleep. Of course, sleep is highly individual. No one is doubting that. There's no one that say, I mean, that's actually the point of your whole presentation, is that it's incredibly individual. And but it's kind of the idea that people are convinced that they need this much sleep in order to, you know, survive, kind of thing. And we're trying to kind of decatastrophize people's beliefs about sleep and how much sleep they need to be getting. So I just got a lot of questions and comments, and I think kind of anxiety about that point. So of course, sleep is individual. And that's kind of what you're doing, right? In setting that kind of sleep window with your patients is figuring out, you know, kind of how to get there. The other comment that a lot of people, or question people had is, how do you know when a patient is ready to sort of, someone said, sleep in the wild, meaning they no longer have to obey these kind of precise rules, right? So when are people ready to do that? Do they have to have this like wake time set for the rest of their lives, or how does that work?
The way that I approach that is we, continue increasing their sleep window based on the sleep journal until we get to a place where they're not feeling tired during the day and all of the sort of the symptoms of insomnia that brought them in to begin with. So that's how I know also whether they've met their individualized sleep need. I agree 100% with the point you just made, Jill, that our sleep needs vary. Even the same person, our sleep needs will vary across our lifespan. And once we have gotten to where we seem to be meeting their sleep need, then I would start to withdraw some of those rules gradually. So maybe they can start to have a little more flexibility on their wake up time. Or I used to love my Sunday afternoon naps, which, I was watching football. And so, I can put those back in when that time comes. And if something disrupts my sleep, then I'll take it back out and, kind of work with it and see what works for me.
Yeah. So I will just say we got lots and lots of other questions. Maybe we'll consider, you guys can let us know in your feedback. Maybe we'll consider doing a part 2 of this and include maybe even more time, another CE presentation with a new piece of the puzzle, and then more time for Q&A, because obviously there's so many questions that we didn't get a chance to. I do want to just run through the last couple of slides to wrap up, and also draw everyone's attention to the chat box. So we put the link for the CE survey in the chat box. So go ahead and click on that link. It comes from Mike Christensen, and go ahead and fill out your CE survey. I just wanted to say that if you're liking sort of the style of our presentation, I wanted to also invite you to join us in August. We're going to David Burns and I are going to do an intensive training for therapists focusing on team CBT for depression and anxiety. This is a 3.5-day intensive in-person training we're going to be doing in South San Francisco, and it's also going to be live streamed online. So for those of you who can't come to San Francisco, I'll just say that people who attend these intensive with David Burns say that they're an incredibly amazing learning experience, but also really special and kind of transformative on a personal level. And this is the first one David has done in 5 years. And yeah, and we'll see how many more he has in him. So I feel like this may be a really unique learning opportunity. So I'll move on to the next slide, but I hope that many of you can join us. A very different kind of training that we have is called the Fast Track to Level 3. This is a weekly training that's offered over the course of 6 months to really bring you to sort of competency in the team CBT model, and to get level 3 team CBT certification ready. And it includes 41 CE credits. So this is a cool kind of hybrid model class where you log in and you have a home study portion that you get to learn from each week that includes myself and David Burns kind of teaching you in a pre-recorded fashion. And then you also log into your live deliberate practice group each week, run by Mike Christensen and Maor Katz. and actually get to practice the skills that you're learning. So that's another training opportunity. And the next slide. Next month, we're going to have another live CE training event, just like this one that I will actually be teaching. And this is Keys for Effective Treatment of Anxiety, Interoceptive Exposure, and Safety Behaviors. So if you haven't seen me or our team present on interoceptive exposure and safety behaviors and how important these are, not only for treating panic disorder, but for treating kind of all the anxiety disorders, we'd love you to join us next month. First of the month, noon, for one free CE. And I think lastly, I will just say so how to get your CE credit. We already covered that. We'll move on to the next one. I just want to say a big thank you first to the presenters today. We hope that you all found it valuable and that we were able to provide you with some practical tools to help your patients and yourselves with sleep difficulties. I think we had 3 really fabulous presenters, and I'm really grateful to all of you. To the audience, if you're considering furthering your expertise in Team CBT, we offer certification and training. So if you have any questions about any of those options, feel free to reach out to us at certification@feelinggoodinstitute.com or check out our website. If you know of anyone who could benefit from our services, whether that's a friend, a family member, a client of yours, you can see the therapists that we have that are available at all different price points on our website, which is feelinggoodinstitute.com. And as always, our commitment is to be helpful to you. We believe in the power of sharing knowledge and building meaningful connections. So if you have any other questions, any feedback, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Let us know your feedback on the survey, and we're here to support you in any way that we can. So thank you to everyone for attending. Thanks to the presenters for presenting, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.